Welcome back to Love, Life, and Legacy, the podcast dedicated to helping you navigate these hyper-sexualized times of ours. And in today's episode, Benji and I are unpacking the fact, just the blatant fact that every single person on this planet struggles with broken sexuality because we're inheritors of a lineage, an endless lineage and tradition, ancestor after ancestor of just sexual brokenness. And that doesn't need to be a grim fact. It just needs to be a known fact because on the other side of that is there are solutions. But unfortunately, just a small percentage of people actually take action on changing their trajectory as a person and then their family's trajectory by getting sexual integrity, by getting heavenly sexuality, by implementing intentionality in their sexuality. But if you do, you reap the rewards big time in your own physical life, but also with your kids and your kids' kids. And that just becomes the new lineage. That's this new idea, thanks to True Parents. So everybody, please listen to this. Everybody struggles with sexuality. And let's say you're the greatest person in the world who has no trouble. Well, to maintain heavenly sexuality takes a lot of intentionality and the same ingredients, meaning community, a vision. So listen. We all need help. What up, y'all? What up, world?
What up? How you doing? How you doing?
We are back in the saddle. We have a horse for you today on the saddle. I don't know if that's a metaphor. It's just words.
Yes.
So
sometimes metaphors go sideways.
I'm 50-50. I've done it on stage in front of hundreds of people where I just start going down this road and nobody follows me down the road. You know, you think you're like a tour guide, like a Sherpa, and then lo and behold, you fall off a cliff. And who's the Sherpa now? It's pretty embarrassing because a lot of times I've just been like, okay, let's just forget. Let's start from scratch, you know?
Gotta take swings, right? Gotta take swings in life. Absolutely.
Because when they work, they really work, and then they resonate. Metaphors my kids are learning about that, just like what are similes and metaphors and all that, and they're extremely helpful to personalize the content. Like, there's testimonies, but then there's a good old metaphor. Like, it just hits. It just hits for centuries, right?
Yesterday I posted in our inner circle group chat, which is mostly single people, right? And so I was making a metaphor that I hope they understood, you know, based on their own knowledge. And so it was, the wording was, when I am at a cafe and I see a delicious looking cake, I don't think, man, I want that cake. I think, man, I want to go home and eat my wife's cake.
Good God.
And and then I said, I hope you guys understand the analogy, wink. And then I realized that means something very different for some people. So I reworded it a little bit.
Just like Benji's wife is a legitimately good chef and cook and baker and all this. So it was the most actual literal form of cake. But when Benji says stuff, somehow it just sounds sexual. I like to brush my teeth, you know what I'm saying? And people are like, you lost me, you creep. No, I just actually like brushing my teeth, guys. Okay, so today, guys, we wanna like get into some stuff. We want to get in some basics. We talk about metaphors and analogy. We've done 200 and I don't know. This is like 263 or something like that. A lot of podcasts. And again, I thought in the beginning we'd run out of things to say after 100 max. Like, there's no way you can talk about sex for that long. And we are just like getting started. We have so many ways to unravel this. I was going to say pickle. You can't unravel a pickle. And it's also sexual. But onion, let's say, to peel back this onion and understand what is sex and everything associated with it so that we can be people who live with intentionality in respect to sex. This is a crazy, simple, and yet totally avoided, topic of conversation is how to be sexually intentional. Like, people just don't do it. They're like, geniuses in many other ways. I always look at somebody like Tim Ferriss, who's like, he calculates every aspect of his life to optimize it. He's a human optimizer, and he's never been in a relationship that lasts, and his sex is all over the place. And like, you missed it, right? So we want to just go back to basics and start talking about the fact that everybody struggles with sexual integrity problems, every single person on this planet, because this is a planetary issue, right? And humans are at the center of this planetary issue, and we haven't resolved our stuff. So you're either implicated by omission or by commission, right? Either you have a fear of sex and a lot of dysfunction in that way, or you're oversexed, like so many of us, because we're inundated with sex. And so everybody struggles to some degree, but very few people do anything about it. And we want to talk about this phenomenon. You know what I'm saying, Benji, as you say?
Yeah, I mean, like the default, we talk about this, but it's the default that comes to mind is just being raised on the internet.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about just porn. I'm talking about like the soft borderline sexual stuff that's everywhere on every platform you can think of, right? And so it's ludicrous to think that if we're not intentional, we're not going to be strung along in some fashion to think about sex in a certain way. And that's kind of the trajectory right now of our culture. It's the default education. It's just the internet.
You are meant to really like wake up and have a productive day, meaning like you do stuff that you care about and you do it as best as you can. And if you're married, then you come back home at some point, and some nights when it makes sense, you make love with your spouse. And that was like the extent of sex for a healthy individual. And now it's just like you wake up, most people just, they open up their phone and they start scrolling. And right away, out of the gate, first 5 minutes, they're just being blasted with images of sex. So like, before you've even left your bed, now you're triggering yourself. Of course, it's going to wear you down. It's going to have an impact on you. And so, yeah, there's so many kind of impacts. It impacts us all. It impacts how we form society, shape our expectations, right? Like, why do so many people refuse to believe that they could be in a loving relationship? This is all part of it. It's chipping away at the human consciousness that we are not able to do something as simple as love another person eternally, right? And so we want to unpack this phenomenon of the fact that, because whenever we go anywhere, right, Benji, there's resistance. There's, don't talk to young people about this because you might be exposing them to sex, and then they'll know about sex and they'll just start having sex everywhere all the time, right? There's this feeling of like, if you talk about sex in a healthy way, then that'll cause them to jump face first into broken sex. And it's this fear from parents who care about their kids, obviously, but they assume that so long as you don't expose them to hardcore pornography, then things will work out in the end. And I'm releasing a podcast about purity very soon. And I do have a clip in there from this very famous educator who talks about the fact that in his view, in his worldview, if you just didn't talk about sin or sinful things, then we wouldn't have any problems. We'd figure it all out, which is just nonsense. People don't just figure this stuff out. They're supposed to, you don't just drop a kid off in an empty building and say, they'll educate themselves. They'll figure out calculus or physics no, you have to learn from somewhere, right? And in terms of sex, you're supposed to learn about the good stuff so that you can keep your mind focused and be intentional. Or you're going to learn about all the bad stuff, or you're going to experiment out of ignorance and you're going to make a lot of mistakes and then you'll feel bad and then so on and so forth, right? So you do have to learn, regardless, wherever we go, anywhere in the world. There's a percentage of people that's like, just don't say anything because you're going to ruin everything. Don't say a word because then we're all going to go down. Well, the ship will sink, and it's ludicrous.
I mean, I'm guilty of that too. When I first went to the Set Free Summit with you, Andrew, and a bunch of other folks, it was 2016. Yeah, 2016 in April.
That was a hard
And,
by the way. Like
that
I was
was,
being accused of something. You're
with-
like, with
Well,
you, man.
I just want to acknowledge the fact that we have this common experience of sleeping in the same room in a hotel
Get
in
us all
Greensboro, North
killed.
Carolina, and eating milkshakes at 1 a.m. So at that workshop, it was the first time we were really exposed to even considering remotely as a movement, like what is porn and how do we address it?
Yeah.
And going into it, my thinking was a very subconscious, I would say, not a very conscious thought of, is this even a big deal? Right? Like, I know people watch porn. I know, I get it. But is it really worth it? That was kind of my thought going into it. Like, is this worth all of our attention and energy and money to go to this weekend workshop to really talk about this? And really deep down, it was like, is this something that because it's such an undertaking to bring it out in the open, especially in our movement, where the majority, according to our own surveys of thousands of people, the majority of men and women, young men and women, do watch porn occasionally, right? Or frequently. And so is it worth unearthing all of that? Because to do that would take in a massive amount of energy and work to just do that. And then there's a lot of scary darkness and shadows that's going to come as a result. Yeah. So I get it. I mean, I don't agree with it. I mean, coming down the road, like where like almost 10 years later since then, I mean, that workshop in itself changed my trajectory and how I believe about this. But I understand that there's definitely a lot of fear people have of, or hesitation, I would say, to delve into this.
Yeah. And I guess I don't want it to come across as, angry. It is frustrating, to be honest, because it keeps on happening, and it's a hindrance. In one of our chapters right now, there's a BFD leader who doesn't want to work with us because they're afraid of confidentiality, because they've had confidentiality in their chapter with their own work, and they think they're projecting on us that it's going to be bad when we do it because they're bad at it. So they're preventing healing out of fear of what might happen because they're bad at something. And so it's like, oh my God, this logic is killing me, right? So there's those obvious frustrations. But there's two parts of this conversation that we'd love to have today. The first is kind of everybody struggles to some degree and few people change. And the everybody struggles part of this conversation needs to be very, very well understood, that the idea of high noon and sexual integrity and heavenly sexuality is very new, and the early adopters are very few, right? The people who are really, just even in our movement, if you look at statistically, the amount of people who have been in our programs, it's just a fraction of our total membership. And it's not because those are the freaks of our movement. It's they're the most proactive, smartest, forward-thinking people regarding their sexuality. And again, this is a common pushback we get is, well, yeah, you just do your thing over there in the corner and we'll focus on the real work, like witnessing and praying and these kind of things. And then our point is high noon isn't for everybody all the time, but it's definitely for everybody because everybody struggles. Every single person on this planet, if you are a Christian or if you're part of our movement or if you have basic common sense, you realize that we all have some form of sexual dysfunction based on the wrong inputs that have gone into us. And so everybody struggles. I'd like to just unpack this a little bit more with you, Benji. Like, because again, a lot of times when we go somewhere, let's say we have an open-minded parent and they're like, wow, yeah, thank you guys for existing. My kids really need this. And what they don't know is that they also really need this, right? This is not an age thing. This is like everybody struggles.
Yep.
Have you experienced that? When you're talking
to
to somebody and you know that they just need it as much as their kid.
Yeah, there's a misnomer in porn use and addiction is that it's a binary black and white thing where you are an addict and then we label people as these are addicts and they're associated with this behavior. But if you don't, and we like to do this because it's lazy. It's just fundamentally lazy thought processes. Just, these are addicts. I'm not an addict. I'm okay. My child has a problem. My spouse has a problem. They need help.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just lazy. It is. And so we have to go away from this black and white thinking to really like, to what extent are we, involved or working on her sexual integrity and need support and help.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too is even if somebody's in a very healthy relationship with their spouse, sexual integrity isn't about avoiding the bad stuff. It's also about maintaining the highest standard of heavenly sexuality, Channel Guk level sexuality in your relationship. And that requires continual maintenance because we get sloppy sometimes. Our viewpoints get a little bit complacent or self-centered, and we need a reminder to stay sharp that this is our legacy at the end of the day, is our love. And in order to love most, we need to be able to focus and to live intentionally. And our world is set up to break people apart. So you go into a house and everybody's on their phone, they're missing out on the opportunity of intimacy, right? So I want to say that not everybody struggles with pornography. I do want to make that distinction that everybody struggles with sexuality for sure. There's some sort of sexual dysfunction. And for pretty much every young person that is then, facilitated through porn for sure. And our stats. I don't know if you were there, but we were in Korea one time talking to the guys in Cheonggyeong, showing them our statistics. About 82% of young men watch porn, and at that time, 48% of young ladies watch porn. And they were like, "Oh my God, we're shocked." And that's what a lot of older people say is like, "Oh my God, this is shocking." But then they continue the sentence with, "I thought it would have been 100%. And we're like, "Ah?" And they're like, "Yeah, we're in Cheonggyeong. So we do the one-on-ones, right? People do the workshop and then they have the one-on-one counseling." They said 100% of that guy in particular said that he had done over 20,000 one-on-one interviews, and 100% of them had some sort of sexual dysfunction in their marriage, right? And the more recent years, it's porn, right? Yeah. So I do want to make that distinction that everybody has sexual issues, but not everybody watches porn. But most young people do, and a lot of older people are starting to, just because, like you said, young people were born on their phones. They came out of their mom and they fell on a phone, and then they were just raised on a phone like a petri dish. And their world is a phone. Anybody, 2008, something like that, and beyond is like you lived in a smartphone world. But everybody else, it's kind of like we've adopted this cell phone world, but we weren't of it, right? So yeah, most people struggle with porn, and everybody struggles with some sort of sexual dysfunction. And every single person on the planet needs to be in some sort of program to keep themselves sharp so that they can live the highest expression of heavenly sexuality, which is an endeavor, man. You know what I'm saying? Because being married, you cannot press repeat. You cannot repeat a day. There's no such thing as the same day twice, and you have to find new motivation all the time for being a husband or being a wife. It takes a lot of intentionality to keep the love fresh, and in terms of sexuality, no different. To keep the feelings about your partner fresh, that's a massive part of sex, is how you feel about the other person. You have to be able to get past the negative, and you have to find gratitude and all this, and that's a practice. And we teach that in High Noon, right?
Yep.
So this is also another thing I've noticed personally when we're dealing with things like institutions like ACLC, Women's Federation, UPF, all these organizations that I know the leaders of these, and they always are very complimentary. They can see the value of our work. And then I always extend an invitation to be like, every single person that you try to help also has sexual problems, and we could probably help them too, and we could collaborate. And they're like, yeah, please go away. That's not our focus. That's creepy. That's too hard. Like, we like talking about these things, right? And so, and then for a while, Women's Federation was dealing with human trafficking, and they were like, "Oh yeah, High Noon's great. We're doing human trafficking." And we're like, "Yeah, that's fantastic." But it's easy to be righteous about something like human trafficking because it's over there and it's clearly egregious. But can we talk about how porn fuels human trafficking? And and they stop short of that because it's so confronting, right? But the main point is this, that even them, all of their people struggle with sex problems too, right? Everybody that we're witnessing to, and there's a bunch of new members in America, all those people have need some updated software in terms of their understanding of sex, in terms of filtering into the heavenly way. So everybody connected to every organization in our entire movement struggles with sex, and High Noon can help all those people.
Hey, sorry to interrupt. If you are someone that is struggling with sexual integrity, especially if you want to get blessed in the future and you're struggling in silence and darkness, then we have a special one thing that you all can do, which is to join the webinar that is at highnoon.org. Go to highnoon.org. It's the first thing you'll see is a webinar to join for free and to break free from sexual integrity. Check it out, highnoon.org. And let's get back to the show, shall we?
Right. Doesn't mean that we need to take all them into our programs. That's a lot of people and that's a lot of problems. But it means that what we're doing not only could be, but should be applied to every single person that is coming into our world. And if you're working on your sexual integrity, you can help people more. If you're not, you can't really help them because you're stuck just the same.
Yeah. So what are we asking people to do to start?
You tell me,
I mean,
Benji.
because we don't want everyone to drop everything. You know, there's a place for every mission. But what is it people can start with? I would say, first of all, from my view, it's understand the importance of sexuality and how it fuels so much of our satisfaction as an individual, couple, and family and society. And not even, scratching the surface of spiritual ramifications of sexuality, right? If you're talking about the fall and the blessing. Putting that aside, just from like a cultural and individual,
Can't put that aside.
like just for people that are like, oh, I don't want to go. Like that's like the infinity and beyond stuff. But let's talk about practical, like physically how this affects you. Your sex drive, the creative energy that God gave you, the really, really beautiful drive you had since you were a, teen or younger, is such a beautiful thing that can be used to create and to give, or it can be used for selfish. And I think that the question that Father was asking us, and Mother, by the way, Mother talked a lot about absolute sex in the 90s, by the way. True parents are asking this question is like, how are you using your sexual organ? Is it like for yourself or is it for God? Is it for yourself or is it for your spouse? That's really it. And that's all I think we're asking people to do is to evaluate, how am I using my sex drive? Not as a bad, evil thing that's controlling me, but a really beautiful God-given thing to stop and be like, how am I using it? And importantly, how do I want to use this? And I think that's all we're asking people, like in the beginning stages, is like, just be clear about that and take steps towards that. And our content is fueled by that. We have the Ascend program, which is literally like, you struggle with porn and masturbation, here, we'll help you through that entire process. It's a really good program that's free, by the way, which is crazy. And so just taking steps, and maybe it's talking to somebody, right? When I was really struggling in my relationship with my wife and we weren't intimate for a long time, I've talked about this before, I didn't talk to anybody about it. It didn't like register as an option because I kind of was like, well, this is just how it is. It was just an acceptance, but not like a beautiful surrendering acceptance. It was just like a tolerance. It's like, okay, this is how marriage is for me, right? And I just have to
resignation.
Resignation. Yeah, I turned in my resignation, turned in my balls, and I didn't do anything about it. I was just like, and then it was like through, I think the first time I told someone was actually Crescentia, where we're like having a one-on-one talk. This is when I was literally working with her in headquarters. And it was
just
like
another day at the office, right?
A day at the office. We're having a deep conversation. And then, as you do in the BFM, we started talking about, difficulties or challenges. And I was like, yeah, my wife and I have not been intimate for a while. And she just like listened. And then when I spoke it out loud, here's the magic, is like when you speak stuff out loud, it kind of just starts to have the snowball effect of resolving itself, And so I started seeing myself more clearly. I was like, oh, maybe there's something I can do. Oh, maybe there's something that I can grow or I can change about myself. And it's not just my wife's fault. And that was my conclusion from that conversation. It's like, oh, I'm doing something, I'm contributing to this mess, and I can do something to get us out of it. I can. And then I started talking to like Uncle Dave, talk to you, and it was just like a few conversations. And maybe for some people, that's what needs to start. Right?
So basically, I saved his marriage. So
Yes.
the lesson is Andrew's the best. That's what I got out of your little story there, buddy.
You're welcome.
Yeah, think about the two polarities, the two different energies of one. You're just going up this very steep hill, and you are pulling this boulder and this chain. Every day is just exhausting because you're going uphill. You're doing it by yourself. And that's what it is for most people. They have these burdens. They're trying to deal with them by themselves, and it's exhausting. And they don't realize that how futile their efforts are. You're right. Like, first of all, they're not even asking, why am I going up such a steep hill? And why am I doing it by myself? And why am I carrying this giant rock? When life could be a lot more fluid than that, when it could be like coasting on water, and when you have, I don't know if you've seen those dragon boats or a canoe or whatever, when you have multiple people and you have a good rhythm, then you can go so fast. And that's what life can be when you start figuring out where you want to go and you start enlisting people onto your team to help you get there. But in terms of sex, and if we were to ask you, where do you want to go with your sex? People are like, it's like putting on the emergency brake when they're just driving. It completely stops. It's like a wrench in your thinking, because people don't think like that. You just have sex in your life when it wants to come, and then it possesses you, and then it goes away, just like this weird, spirit that, and that's how a lot of people experience it. And
yeah,
instead of be like, what do you want to do with your sex, like you're talking about, your sexual energy, and with your sex in general? What do you want to do? Where do you want to go with that? And if it's towards God, well, there's certain things you can absolutely do, and we can help you get there. And otherwise, you will just be taken wherever sex wants you to go. And that's typically straight to the worst place you could possibly be. And then when it's done, when that feeling, that energy's gone, that feeling's gone, then you're just left feeling like, what have I done? Right? And it wasn't you. It was just you let the wheel go, and you let it get taken over by this energy, because you didn't have anywhere to go to direct it. And so, there's countless stories like Benji, who are people just carrying this burden alone. I had a talk with somebody this week. He's a husband. He's a great dude, and he's really struggling with his marriage. And he called me, and I tried my best. I just felt like I talked too much to anybody listening. Immediately, you kind of do that, Andrew. But because that's my flavor. That's what I just have so much to give, and I try to give it all at once. And that's not sufficient, because it's just one perspective. But imagine he had somebody who has nothing to say but only can listen, right? And then they have somebody who's more kind of in the middle, and then they have a woman, like an elder woman, and like you need a spectrum of voices to help you figure out this riddle and to get what you actually need. It's not just one person. That's why we're trying to create a community experience here, right? That you have a group, that you have a facilitator, that you have a mentor. This is like diversity of voices and opinions. It's not one person's going to save you. That's not it. You just need a community so you can actually save yourself.
Perspective, different perspectives. I think we undervalue the value of having perspective. You know, it's like, it's God. If you can see from a different angle on your situation, that's God, because God sees you probably most likely different from how you see you, especially at your lowest moments and our lowest times. If we could just take a step back and view the situation from a heavenly height, it's like game over. Like, everything's different. And so I think in that situation I mentioned, like talking to you and Andrew, and
I'm
other Andrew. I meant other Andrew. The other Andrew.
There's no other Andrew in this room.
Yeah. And Crescentia, it's like I just kind of saw things clearly. And then that was the impetus for us to move to North Carolina. It was like, I want to change something. And we moved, and like life has been completely different since then. So yeah, perspective. I agree.
Yeah, it's just New York City. Everybody get out of New York City and move to North Carolina. That's
Actually-
the cure to all that ails.
I actually want to go back to New York City as my current self. I feel like it would be very different, my perspective on things.
Sure.
It's a challenge,
So then why do very few people change, Benji? What is it that holds people back from signing up for our programs, from taking this seriously? What do you think?
You have to have the will to change. I want to hear you have to have the will to change, to be different. Because everybody wants to change. But when it comes down to it, porn and masturbation offer a fleeting benefit that very few people will have the will to say, I want to be bigger than this. I want to be bigger than the addiction. I want to be bigger than the feelings that it gets me. And I want to change. And having that will is like the first spark that gets people to do something, And when I say will to change, I don't mean like gritting, biting your tongue and just pushing through brute force strength and will through something. I mean like when the moments are there where you're like, this minute, micro decisions of do I do this? Do I do this? Even thoughts themselves. Like I've talked to so many men who are like, as soon as I have the thought, I think I'm going to watch porn later, they've already lost the battle in their mind. They've already decided. Even the
Like
thought,
the if.
maybe I'll do it later, maybe, or as soon as they open the browser or go on Instagram, it's like for them it's game over. But having the will means like when you have the thought before it's even manifested in an action, you just like no, like it's just that moment. You're like, what I do, and I actually do this. I go Super Saiyan, which means I like flex all my muscles, and I like if I'm alone in the car, I will yell like this, like this, like as loud as I can. And
Don't
if I'm
Teslas record you when you're driving?
100%, yeah,
You are in their
Elon-
system. You are on a list.
yeah,
For sure.
Elon's over there just having a laugh at me. But I will, and if I'm in public or like in my house, I will just like, quietly bite my teeth, grind my teeth, and be like, ah. And it always puts a smile on my face because it's funny to me because I imagine myself going Super Saiyan, my hair turning yellow. But importantly, it like sends a different signal to me that it's like, I don't want this. Any thought, not just sexual stuff, but like any thought I don't want or feeling I don't want is like flex my muscles and I'm like, like this. And that's what I do. Some people do push-ups, that I've talked to. They do push-ups, they jumping jacks, they want to run. Some people will call somebody. I think that's important. Journal all your thoughts out, whatever it is, like do something that sends a signal that I'm bigger than this. Like I want to be better than this. And so I think that's like fundamentally it. The difference between someone that does something is like, do you have the will to change? Do you want to be bigger than the slight benefits you're getting from the behavior of porn, masturbation, whatever it is?
Yeah. So, at some point in your life, you'll be faced with the opportunity to give something up in order to get something better. And from a rational perspective, it's not really a hard choice at all. It's like, do you want something better than what you have now? And of course you do. But the sacrifice is you have to give up something. And that something is your old self, some old habits, some old friends. So like with alcoholics, they're always asked to just stop hanging out with the people that they used to hang out with because those people will inevitably bring you back to alcohol, right? And like when I joined the church, I basically gave up all my friends and it was the toughest thing that I've ever done because I really love those guys. And it wasn't like nobody was asking me to do it. I just saw it as these guys are all trying to stop me from growing right now. They're like, you can't do this. You're not a guy who believes in God. You make fun of God. They're like reminding me of my old self, and I'm like, I know, but I feel like I'm curious now. They're like, no, you can't. And so I was like, I just had to let them go. And I think about them often, and they were a sacrifice that I made in order to level up and get all that I have now, which is like I have. It's not even a question of like, do I want my old friends or do I want like my family and like this amazing life that I have? It's not even close. But it's something that you'll have to do. If you do want to actually consider upgrading your life, you're going to have to let something go. And there's that Pink Floyd song, Comfortably Numb. And that's the thing is most people are in this position where they're comfortably uncomfortable. they're like, yeah, my life sucks, but there's somehow a but in there. Like, yeah, I'm really not enjoying life, but I don't want to change because it's blah, blah, blah. There's always some reason. It's like, you have to find it in you, the willingness to sacrifice that comfort. That's what, like, an abusive that's the essence of an abusive relationship, is when somebody, we just saw this with Johnny Depp, right? I don't know if you saw any of that, but he was in a court case where he was accused of being an abuser. And then it turns out he had documentation of his wife abusing him physically and mentally and all this. In order to get out of an abusive relationship, that the abuser is going to do everything in their power to manipulate you to feel like you're wrong, so that you keep on coming. Oh, you'll be nothing without me. You're worthless. You need me, right? And you have to rip that Band-Aid off and just live. And porn is absolutely doing that to you. It's saying that you can't live without me. Even though I make you feel like trash, even though I hurt your feelings and I ruin your potential as a human, you need me. And it's a complete lie. And so you have to have the strength and the clarity of mind to look at porn in the face and be like, I'm done. And to mean it, because it will know and you'll know when you're actually serious and you're ready to give it up. And if you don't have the strength now, then start hanging out with us, join our early stage programs, and start gathering the strength to stand up to this abuser, which is porn. It's abusing you, right? There's some lower self in you, like your immature self, that's completely in control. And if you want to gain back control, you have to stand up to it. So yeah, just maybe you could watch Toy Story 3. I just watch a ton of movies with my kids, and Toy Story 3 is, you got to stand up to your inner Lotso. Lotso was exactly that. Weird fact, by the way, everybody in Asia is obsessed with Lotso. I don't know what it is. There's all these Daisos, and they sell, everybody in Korea, like Thailand, Vietnam, they have what's his name? Lotso t-shirts, and it's weird. And he's an abuser.
I don't think they understood the story at all. It didn't get their plot twist.
He's this highly abusive, terrible person, and they have all these pillows. There's a Daiso close to us, and the entire thing is pink, and it's like all Lotso stuff. It's very bizarre. But there's the porn is Lotso. It's like, it's manipulating you, and he's trying to get them to be comfortable with a terrible situation. And if they try to get out, he just tries to manipulate circumstances so that you remain stuck there. So you got to stand up to him, and that's what Woody did. That's what the crew did. You got to stand up. But if you don't have the strength, then you need to borrow that strength with the community. That's what makes you strong, is not doing everything on your own like a Messiah. That's already taken care of. What you need to do is to actually take responsibility for your own life and borrow the strength of other people until you have it yourself. And the conviction comes with reassurance that you can handle whatever happens next, which is the loneliness of not having porn anymore. Because now there's a void in your life, right? And you'll have to learn how to fill it with something, but yeah.
Well,
shout out to Lotso. So then what can people do?
Freaking go. We have a completely free self-paced 21-day course challenge program, Ascend Level 1. Go to highnoon.org. Join it. It's the first thing you'll see. Just do it.
Yeah, we are trying to set this up around the world, right? So we have this program in Spanish and Portuguese now, in Japan. We have English-based groups, but sometimes people speak different languages. We've had French before. We could potentially do it in Russian. We're very dexterous. And the point is that it's all the same formula, right? So it's having a vision, North Star goal, plus practicing the 5 high noon virtues in community. That's the guaranteed formula to eventually evolving into the person that doesn't need porn anymore. But you have to go through this. It's not a panacea, like one-time thing. It's like practicing the 5 high noon virtues in community based on a vision for yourself of who's the next iteration of me that I want to grow into. That's what we offer in these groups. And so otherwise you don't have a vision and you don't have support. So what do you think the conclusion is going to be? More of the same. That's it. More of the same. So if you actually want to change, then you need a vision, and we can help you build that. And you need a community, and we can help you inherit a community, right? Because most people just don't have a regular community that they can check in, that knows what they're doing, that has some sort of trajectory. So sign up. Yeah, it's like the first thing you see on the website, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So do it. I mean, that's if you're a man or a woman and you struggle with porn or masturbation, join the program. Hard stop.
Yep. There you go.
If you are blessed and it's your blessing that you want support with, then we have Radiant. And if you don't struggle with porn or masturbation and you're preparing for the blessing, we have Core. But really, like, our goal is to remove any roadblocks that stands in between you and heavenly sexuality. And so if you do have any kind of like porn or masturbation stuff at all, then Ascend is the place for you to go to remove those things so you could go back to your vertical allegiance to love. And the other, like, Core is really for people who don't have those roadblocks, and the roadblock is just they feel ill prepared. They want to ace this test known as the blessing. They want to show up prepared. Like, yeah, we got you. But it's not going to resolve the porn stuff that comes by focusing on it. Yeah. Cool.
Cool.
Benji looks like he's got nothing left to say. So it means that either this episode is done or it's Armageddon, because Benji doesn't run out of things to say. So hope you can listen to it, and it's not the end of the world. And we'll see you next week.
Yep. See you guys.
Bye.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you have, then you're going to love our completely free webinar that we made just for you. It's really good. It's really good. Go to highnoon.org only if you want to get really serious about quitting porn and masturbation. Or maybe you're kind of serious and you're a little curious. Maybe you want to get serious about this, then check it out, highnoon.org. It's a good webinar. It's not that long, and it's going to be setting you off on the right trajectory direction to finally having freedom. We put a lot of effort into it. Check it out, highnoon.org. Lots of love. See ya.